Welcome to the DFO Rundown podcast with Frank Saravalli and Jason Gregor on dailyfaceoff.com. Delivered by DoorDash.
Welcome to episode 69. Nice. Or the Mel Engelstad version of the DFO Rundown, presented by Fantrax. Do you want to dominate your league? Go to fantrax.com, whether you're in a dynasty draft, a season-long draft, a redraft, a keeper. Do it all at fantrax.com. So welcome in Frank Saravalli. Frank, how you doing?
Nice. Yeah, I'm good. Lots of stuff on the go. Season preview week. NHL season preview part 1 on the DFO Rundown. So looking to dive in and excited to look stupid and make some predictions and roll through some of the divisions.
Yeah, we'll go. We'll start in the East a little bit later on. And welcome to the woodjerseys.com studio. It seems like it's a new studio today because we have the new wood jerseys. You see the Seattle Kraken. I will say, man, the Kraken jerseys, the white one, when I saw it live, man, that thing pops. And the dark blue with the teal on the sleeves behind me, it's pretty sweet. And you've got the Toronto Maple Leafs one there. You can go to woodjerseys.com. They got lots of new jerseys there. Check it out. It's great for your fan cave. And I have to say, Frank, what I like about the Kraken one is the red eye in the S part of the logo. It really pops.
Yeah, and I like the anchor. The Space Needle is part of that as well. And I personally just like the Seattle Kraken S because I pretend that the S is for me. So...
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Now, before we get to our Eastern preview today, and we'll do the West next week on Monday's pod, but there are a few things to discuss. Like the Jack Eichel one, it sounds like there's been some progress as far as other teams understanding the medical situation. My question would be, why is it taking so long for that to occur?
Well, I think there was a delay in exactly what was allowed to be provided to some of these other teams. And so I think when you hear Eichel's agent, Pat Brisson, talk to Jeff Marek on the Jeff Marek show on Sportsnet earlier this week, he really kind of revealed a lot in the sense that he is able to share and has permission now from the Sabres to share some of Jack Eichel's MRIs, which he's had a lot of. And he's able to share some opinions. And he said they've had lots of opinions, not just a second opinion. They've had many different opinions on Jack Eichel's neck. And I think what's really interesting to me is sort of the narrative that if you're reading between the lines, like the Eichel camp, we know that they're anxious and hungry to get moving, but they're really pushing. He reiterated again that playing in the Olympics is really important to Jack Eichel. He said that the timeline, if he has the artificial disc replacement surgery, to return to the ice is somewhere between 3 and 4 months. So that's an important time frame that really hadn't been out there. A lot of people surmise that it might be in that neighborhood. Don't know what the time frame is, and Brisson didn't mention what that is on the other type of surgery. Obviously, that's not a focus for the Eichel camp. And now that he's been able to share some of that medical information with these other interested teams and parties, they've also gotten the idea that some of these teams are willing to go along with the artificial disc replacement. And frankly, some aren't. So those teams that, really aren't cool with it or comfortable with it, they're probably going to fall out of the picture. And so I think the question is, it's kind of an issue of timing. If you're another team that wants to trade for Jack Eichel, would you trade for him first and then allow him to have the surgery? Or wouldn't you allow him to have the surgery with the Sabres or push to have it done with the Sabres and then see what he looks like on the flip side before trading for him? I don't know that the Sabres would allow that to happen, for instance, but this is a hockey-related injury that occurred while playing for the Buffalo Sabres. So again, this is sticky. It's complicated. There's a lot of layers to it, but I think it's been pretty revealing listening to Pat Brisson that the two sides have remained in constant communication. That I don't think there's ever been in the last 5 weeks since Pat Brisson took over as Jack Eichel's agent, a period of time where they just have fallen out of favor, or it's been so, negative or nasty back and forth that it's fallen apart or the wheels have fallen off. I think they've continued to talk and they're actively trying to find a resolution. I know the Sabres this week have been in meetings with doctors. Like, they're trying to get this done. The question is, can they?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that, like, this is just something that's so much farther behind than where it should be at. And, Eichel might end up missing the Olympics because of it. And that's unfortunate. Obviously he would be on the Olympic team if he was healthy. There's no question about it. So not good for him. Not good for the
I don't think the
Sabres.
Sabres care about that though.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
and obviously I don't know if the Sabres care that much about winning this year either, because they'd want some pieces back to help them. So either way, to me, it's a situation that's drug on far too long, and it doesn't seem like there's an immediate resolution coming anytime soon. So we go from Eichel to a few other quick topics, Frank, which will fit in well to our Eastern Conference preview. The Montreal Canadiens, and we're going to get to Carey Price a little bit later on, but the Canadiens and the Canes, the rivalry, maybe more so off the ice than on the ice.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch. Obviously, the Kotkaniemi offer sheet and all the elements that went with it, the $20 signing bonus, like the press release that went out, all those different things. So here's a little juicy tidbit, and I haven't laid it out there anywhere else or on Twitter yet, but the NHL was alerted that the Carolina Hurricanes only played 4 preseason games on their schedule this year. The CBA mandated minimum is 6. And there's no official confirmation, but there's some thought out there that it's the Montreal Canadiens that had alerted the NHL to this sort of interesting wrinkle in Carolina's schedule. I think, for whatever Carolina's sake was, they just assumed that rule was gone because of the pandemic or whatever it was. And the league allows teams to make their own preseason schedule and set their own dates. So it's not part of the league schedule matrix. So no one would have caught it. There's no penalty, but I think it's probably pretty fair to say that there's no love lost between these two teams. And honestly, like, I can't wait to watch them meet on the ice, like what the environment's going to be like in both Carolina and Montreal, sort of two unlikely rivals. You've got the historic power in Montreal and the Sunbelt team from Carolina that's just, continually punched in the highest weight class in the NHL, winning the Stanley Cup, obviously in 2006, but also in addition to that, they've been one of the best teams in the league the last couple of years. So, to me, just fun. Like, this is fire, little juice, little extra energy.
First of all, I would just like to say I applaud the Carolina Hurricanes because
too.
I think some teams having 8 preseason games is just, it's way, way too many.
I can understand in certain situations, new
Yeah.
coach,
maybe a new coach, but
the Seattle Kraken, I could understand wanting
Sure.
to have 8.
But they only had 6.
Right. And I think, also their building wasn't done either. So that's another thing. And they're scrambling to get it done over the next 2 weeks before hosting their inaugural game on the 22nd. So, I don't know. It's just a fun little interesting wrinkle.
Now, what isn't fun is what happened with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Obviously, if Jenny Malkin's out, Sidney Crosby's going to miss at least the first week of the season. And now, when you talk about bad timing, and it's a reminder that COVID's still around, even though the restrictions for teams and everything have changed this season. But the Penguins having a little bit of a COVID outbreak themselves, and I'm curious, having seen what it did to Dallas. Now, obviously, there's no games canceled or anything like that, but the Dallas players talked about it afterwards, that a lot of them just, you know what, you have too many guys who get it, even if there's not a serious reaction or not. Now, maybe it'll be less because a lot of players are vaccinated, but it is not, it's not an ideal way to start the season.
No, and I don't think it's fair to call it an outbreak. Like, I don't think that's the proper technical term.
Okay.
But I think it's fair to say that the Penguins are on high alert with Zach Aston Reese and Jake Gensel also being confirmed positive. These two guys are vaccinated. I believe their entire team is vaccinated or close to it. And these are what you'd call breakthrough cases, guys testing positive, having been vaccinated. But what's interesting is sort of how did this start and where did it come from? And so there's no way to draw a direct line, but the fact of the matter is the Penguins at their practice facility hosted the USHL Fall Classic a couple weeks back. And so there were 200 plus NHL scouts that were in the building. There's no mask requirement to enter the building. The masks were strongly recommended, but while inside, scouts didn't have to wear masks. And I think more to the point, my understanding is that a lot of the scouts, particularly those coming in from Canada, that are suddenly, free and thinking it's like it was 2 years ago, pre-pandemic, had themselves a time. And so my understanding is that COVID rippled through a lot of the scouting community, and a lot of them figured it out as they needed to get tested to cross the border back and go into Canada. And why other teams are on high alert is because members of their scouting staff that then left that USHL Fall Classic and went to their team's training camp, wherever that was, has also left a lot of teams concerned. And so I think it was a really important reminder for everyone as we're all trying to get back to normal, is like, be smart and wear a mask if you're going to go out there and travel and be on the road. And so, that's sort of the one key takeaway, I think, as we get back to hosting these types of events and tournaments and festivals and things that a lot of different people are at, is we can't just kind of go immediately back to the way things were. That's not, even with a lot of people vaccinated, or the vast majority, that's not how it's going to work. So, certainly some concern there from both the Penguins, who I think largely kept their front office staff separated. They sort of had that perch in the arena that their management watched from. And so, they're hoping that that's not the root of it, and they don't think that it is, but, still interesting nonetheless. It's hard to pinpoint exactly a number with 200 plus scouts there. Someone said to me that there may be as many as 60 scouts that had tested positive. I've heard the number, it could be 15. No one's, keeping that database organized or anything like that. So it's impossible to say for sure, but either way, totally fair to say that a lot of scouts that were at the USHL Fall Classic tested positive for COVID.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I probably should have worded better. It wasn't the Penguins outbreak, but there was essentially, when you have 60 cases from one group, I'd heard from 25 there, so that definitely is something to monitor and is a reminder for sure in how they act. Now there's no direct correlation to this, Frank, but Robin Lehner, of course, last week really got people's attention when he sent out a string of tweets, ended up having a meeting with the National Hockey League, just talking about, there were some teams, maybe they were handing out drugs and Ambien and different things a little bit too easy. And it's a real good reminder when you see what's happening right now with the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, with the head trainer, the director of sports medicine for the Washington football team in the National Football League, Ryan Vermillion. And they have raided his house. They've raided the facility. There's direct disbursement potentially of prescription drugs. And you look at it's just something that, I'm not saying this is the case in the NHL by any stretch of the imagination, but when Robert Lehner brings up something like this, and then you see literally a few days later a massive DEA investigation by a trainer from a professional sports team, it does make you pause and just say, hey, you know what? This is something that's possible. Robert Lehner wasn't just throwing out things on Twitter to irritate people, and it's something I think the NHL should take very serious.
Well, I think they are taking it seriously. I think the question is, how deep of a dive are they going to do on the allegations that Robin Lehner brings forward? I mean, he says that he has proof. I think it'd be fair to sort of outline and commend everyone the changes that were put in place in the NHL starting in 2013 when it was mandated in the CBA that these things need to be tracked, they need to be monitored, and the proper prescription protocols need to be followed. But I think we'd all, including the NHL and Gary Bettman and Bill Daly specifically, and us in the media, would be naive to think that cleaned everything up immediately. So there's quite clearly, at least according to Robin Lehner, still work to be done. And I'm glad that he has stepped forward as an uncomfortable position as that might be, to try and make the game better.
All right, Frankie, let's get into it. Our preview brought to you by ESPN Plus. That's right. They have become a must-have for hockey fans. You can get access to more than 1,000 out-of-market NHL games and 75 weekly national games all season long. Plus, stream thousands of live events from the best leagues and biggest tournaments in the world. Exclusive originals, the complete 30 for 30 library, love that show, premium articles, and fantasy tools, and much more with ESPN Plus. Sign up now at espnplus.com/NHL/DFO. Oh, and today we will start in the Eastern Conference. Teams we like for the playoffs, different things like that, Frank. And of course, we'll do the West next week. So let's start. Both divisions, I think, are ultra competitive. But let's start in the Atlantic. And I know, Frank, we had emailed each other back and forth earlier in the week on where we thought teams were going to make it or not. The Carey Price situation in Montreal, I think, definitely potentially changes maybe where someone had Montreal slotted in on Tuesday compared till now on Friday. So let's start in the Atlantic Division. And who do you have making the playoffs in order?
Okay, so I'm going to give you how I see the entire division in order, top to bottom. And then we'll talk about playoff teams. I think we should talk about the playoff teams after we get to the Metro, because there might be 5 and 3 or whatever it is. So, all right. So at number 1, I have Toronto, 2, Tampa Bay, 3, Florida, 4, Montreal, 5, Boston, 6, Ottawa, 7, Detroit, and 8, Buffalo. And my guess is that you're going to be surprised, given what you just said about Carey Price and the Canadiens, that I have Montreal in the 4 spot, particularly ahead of Boston. And my reason for that is, I think I've said it a couple times, I don't think the Habs are going to be nearly as bad as people think. I think you're going to get more out of Cole Caulfield. You're going to get more out of Nick Suzuki. I still liked their top 4, even without Shea Weber. I think the other 3 guys in that group, people like to rag on a guy like Joel Edmondson. He's a good player and serves a very distinct purpose for that team. And I think Jake Allen is the best number 2 in the league. So what Jake Allen needs to do is hold down the fort until Carey Price can make his way back. He was already likely not going to start the season anyway, coming off of that offseason knee surgery. Now, obviously, with what he's dealing with and our thoughts and concerns are with Carey Price and his family, all that stuff takes a back seat. We're looking at least, according to Mark Bergevin, sort of at least 30 days that Carey Price is going to be away from the team. So that puts him somewhere late November if he's on track to come back in that time frame. That still leaves a vast majority of the season for Carey Price to be a strong contributor to your team, provided that he can, of course, get healthy and get back to that level. And obviously missing Shea Weber is going to hurt, but I just think this team, they've got more scoring touch with Mike Hoffman now. I think Christian Dvorak is going to be a great addition. You got a Jonathan Drouin now, hopefully healthier and in the right frame of mind to get back to the level that he was at earlier in his career. I just think I think the Habs have a lot to offer.
All right. We have actually significantly different slotting. I think we, at least for the top teams anyway. I have Florida first, followed by Tampa Bay, then Toronto, Boston, Montreal, and we have the same bottom 3, Ottawa, Detroit, and Buffalo. I think Ottawa is going to be improved. They'll be competitive. I don't think they're going to be a 6th place team that's way out of it, but I just don't think they've got enough just yet
to break
get
through
in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I really like the Florida Panthers, man. I like a lot their team build up. I think Spencer Knight and is going to push Bobrovsky. It's going to make him better. I think their goaltending is going to be very sound. Barkov, of course, he's got the new contract extension. He's elite. Jonathan Huberdeau has really come in. Those two, they're both, I think, close to top 10, top 15 forwards in the National Hockey League. If Aaron Ekblad doesn't get injured last year, I really wonder what would have happened to Florida. I really like him and Mackenzie Weegar on the back end. I like the mix of skill and grit and size they have on that team. So I think Florida, they're right there. Them and Tampa Bay, man, we saw it in the preseason. That's going to be one heck of an on-ice rivalry. It's exciting to see. It's never really happened, Frank, in the history of those two teams that they were both good at the same time.
Yeah, Scott Burnside, by the way, just wrote a story on dailyfaceoff.com about the Battle of Florida actually being a legit thing for really the first time ever.
It is, and I love it. And, rivalries are fantastic. I don't care what starts them. And if Montreal and Carolina have a lot of angst against one another on the ice because of their management teams, that's even better. The Maple Leafs are just still... I'm not concerned because I think they're a playoff team, but I just wonder about their defense overall. Can it match up to Tampa and Florida? They're easily a playoff team in my mind. Montreal, my standings actually didn't change on the Carey Price news because I still think even without Carey Price, they're better than the bottom teams. And I didn't think with Carey Price they'd be better than Boston. And so I think that, the old Adams division rivalry between those two, they'll be close. I don't think there's much separation, Boston and Montreal. And so that's why I have them slotted there. Boston, man, and I've counted them out sometimes in the past, and I really like Swayman coming up as a young goaltender. I think he's going to make the Tuukka Rask transition fairly smooth.
Well, my concern with Boston is just there's so many new faces. I think it's sneaky how many changes they've had. Yes, the core is there with the Bergeron, Pasternak, and Marchand group, and Charlie Coyle and everyone else. On the back end, Charlie McAvoy and Brandon Carlo, but they're adding like 2 to 3 new defensemen to their mix. Linus Ullmark, a complete change in goal. Jeremy Swayman obviously going to pick up more of the slack, as you mentioned, but also a lot of new forwards as well. Nick Foligno, Craig Smith, Eric Hall. Like, these are all new faces, new places, a lot of adjustment. And I don't know. I mean, they could easily be a playoff team. I could just see things going sideways a bit, but I think we need to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, you have them third. I have them first. Why do you have them third? I guess is the easiest way to ask.
Well, just because I think Florida's a deeper team top to bottom, right? And I like Florida's goaltending way better than I like Toronto's. And goaltending is so crucial in today's NHL.
I think that's such a good point. Honestly, not a lot of people have been talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs and their goaltending situation. I think sort of the hope is the way that the Leafs have constructed their goaltending with Jack Campbell and Peter Mrazek at that cap range is that they're just sort of hoping to be average, be in the league average right around there, 905, 906 save percentage, whatever it ends up being this year. And the team will clearly have enough goals to get them over the top. The reason why I don't like Florida to win the division, and I love the team, like I think all those pieces, like Sam Reinhart could easily be a point per game player this season. And I really like all the moves that they've made. I look at their defense core and I just say that's a little thin for me. And, you mentioned Ekblad, and I think he's going to have a fantastic year. I think Mackenzie Weegar is a good player. Forsling probably doesn't get enough attention for how well he plays, but I think there's a pretty significant drop off. And I think the Leafs have and match the Panthers in all of that top end scoring, obviously, but I think their defense is structured a bit better top to bottom than Florida. And I just have Tampa in the 2 spot because I just think it's so hard to get geared up after winning 2 cups to have a really super consistent out of the gate, strong all the way through regular season when you know that you don't need to flip the switch until it really matters.
I'm 100% agreement. And I think Tampa Bay, going for the three-peat is going to be massive for them. Obviously that's going to be their goal. And I think that, on certain nights in the regular season, not that you take a night off by any stretch, but, they've lost some key guys, some depth players. They still have their elite stars, which is why, they're an easy playoff team in my eyes. And you know what, Frank, I look back and it's obviously been a while, but you look at teams that are competitive and have won the cup for those years. They don't necessarily win their division every year. Because ultimately, if they finish second in their division, I don't think they're worried if they have to go on the road in the second round and that they can't win. So I'm 100% agreeing with you.
They don't have anything to prove.
No, very little. And Florida or Toronto, both of those teams are teams that, they're like the younger brother who feels like he's got something to prove against the big dog. And, we'll see if they're able to do it. I think, those top 3, they could easily finish in any order, 1, 2, 3 at all. I had Florida over Tampa Bay simply because I think they'll want the division a little bit, maybe more than Tampa would at times in the regular season. And I think those 3 teams, though, honestly, I think there'll be a separation from them to the rest. I don't think it's going to be like who's ever third, number 4 is 1 or 2 points back. I think there'll be a separation amongst those top 3.
Interesting. All right, let's move to the Metro. Give me your top 8 in order.
I'll say this, Frank. I must have went through this more than any other division. Like I find like the top three in the top three in the Atlantic, I thought there was a separation. I can't like there's a lot of teams in the Metro that could easily finish second or fifth, at least for me when I was breaking them all down. And I think that like the bottom two slots were the easiest for me. And it's kind of, I have New Jersey and Columbus as 7 and 8. I don't buy like New Jersey's going to be improved, but I don't think they're going to be that improved. But the top six, I battled with it up and down. And ultimately I came up with, I have the Islanders first, followed by Carolina, Washington, the New York Rangers, Philadelphia, and then the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then New Jersey and Columbus. And the Islanders...
So Rangers at 4 is what surprises me, because we had our first 3 that are the same, Islanders, Carolina, and Washington in order. So why did you go Rangers 4?
Well, I've looked back the last 2 seasons for the Rangers, and their starts is what's crushed them. They've been really good in the second half. Now, a lot of that's tied into Mika Zibanejad. Now, I know that Mika Zibanejad had COVID last year, so I'll give him that. I've seen how some guys react. It takes a long time. And the previous year, like in the second half of the season, he was the most dangerous goal scorer in the NHL in 2020 from January on. Like the guy was on fire. And if Zibanejad can just not be kind of a ghost for the first 20 games, he's that important to that team. And obviously they got the reigning Norris Trophy winner, Adam Fox. I like their goaltending. I really think, and I know he got injured, but they're saying it's not serious. I think Ryan Reeves is just going to bring something that it's an intangible to a locker room that just makes everybody feel a little bit more confident. And he's not the old days of the mid-90s enforcer who literally played 4 minutes a night and couldn't do much. Like Ryan Reeves can contribute. He was on the ice for 10, 11 solid minutes in Vegas for years. And so he contributed to that. He definitely will he'll chirp anybody. He's not afraid of anybody. And I think he gives a little bit extra cockiness to that entire room. I feel, and the other thing is Capo Caco. I'm saying it right now. I think he's the breakout player this year. He's into his 3rd season. I think he's going to have a big year for the New York Rangers. I'm not a point a game or anything like that, Frank, but I think this guy jumps up significantly. I think he's going to be a 50+ point player. They've got Panarin. They've got lots of depth through their lineup. So I picked the Rangers to move up. Philadelphia, them and the Rangers, it was literally almost flip a coin. I think Philly has a bounce back season after being terrible last year. I think Carter Hart will be way better. I like their overall depth. And Pittsburgh, I just think the lack of Malkin, the Crosby, even if it's only 2 weeks in that division, you get off to a slow start. I think you're playing catch up. You mentioned Gensel might not be out. If they got so many question marks to start the season. I don't think they'll be out of it by any stretch, but I had to put somebody 6 out of those top 6 teams, and it turned out being the Penguins. Who do you got?
Okay, so I got Islanders 1, Carolina 2, Washington 3, as mentioned. And then I have Philly 4, Pittsburgh 5, Rangers 6, New Jersey 7, Columbus 8. Now, here's the thing. I could see everything that you said happen. Like it's all, it's all within the realm of possibility. Like I think the Rangers, and if you have really just 1 or 2 of those young players take a big step, they're going to be in a way better spot. I'm just not a believer in their defense. Yes, they have Adam Fox. I think it's Fox here. I think there's Trouba a bit below him, and then it's an enormous drop off to the guys below them. And yeah, there's still, as much of a believer as I am in Igor Shesterkin, and I think his contract is fantastic. All those things. And I like Alexander Georgiev as the guy spelling him when needed. I think Carter Hart proved last year that with a really young goalie, and obviously Shesterkin is a little bit older than Hart because he played in Russia, the path and progression is not always a straight line up. So that's another question mark for the Rangers. I just think they have still room to grow and to build in order to get to where they want to get to.
And that's fair. I just like the Sammy Blaze along with Goudreau and Reeves, just as and we saw in Tampa Bay, like
but
those
they took
guys,
a 60-point player in their lineup out in Buchnevich.
Yeah, no, I like Boo. Well, that's where I think Kako and Lafreniere. I'm not ready to. I don't think they can't all have big jumps. That's like I've never won.
That's why I said 1 or 2 of those guys, and they're gonna Kako or Lafreniere. Like you're gonna have a big jump forward. I think as a team. Yeah, you really only need one. And that could say, like, that's to say nothing of Kravtsov or how does Philip Scheitel do? Does he take another step forward? Like all those things, they're all going to play a part in how the Rangers do as a group.
I'll say this, the one defenseman, Ryan Lindgren, he might be the most underappreciated defenseman in the NHL. Right? Like I know that Adam Fox is like the highlight reel guy and he's really good, but man, as a pair, they play together exceptionally well. And I've had lots of scouts say Ryan Lindgren he really knows how to defend. And I had a GM explain to me how you look at, let's say there's 215 NHL defensemen, right? There's probably maybe 25 who are like really good offensively. Mm-hmm. Then the rest, the ones who stay there year after year, they're good defensively. And Ryan Lindgren really knows how to defend. He knows how to play with Adam Fox. And I think he's not the splashy guy. He's not going to get a lot of accolades, Frank, but I really like him as a defenseman who he knows how to defend. And playing with a high octane offensive guy, you need to be a good defender. Like I look at Chris Tanev and Hughes in Vancouver and look at the difference Hughes' game without Tanev. Right. And I'm not saying Lindgren's not there yet, but I think in the next few years, people are going to look at the Rangers and say, geez, who's this Ryan Lindgren guy? Like he's out there. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He knows how to defend and he knows how to make a first pass.
So let me give you my 8 playoff teams. And this is where there might be some surprise.
Okay.
So I've got Toronto, Tampa, and Florida from the Atlantic. And I think only 3 are getting in. And it's funny because I was saying a few weeks ago that I think there's a chance that 5 get in from the Atlantic. And that's obviously still possible. But I think 5 get in from the Metro, the Islanders, Carolina, Washington, Philly, and Pittsburgh. And the reason why I'm saying that is I think there's going to be an interesting point distribution in the Atlantic that I think those 3 teams are so head and shoulders above the rest of the group that they're going to beat up and create some separation between themselves and everyone else in that division. Whereas in the Metro, I think it's a lot more evenly stacked. And you're going to see a lot of teams sort of in the same point neighborhood that, a rising tide raises all boats kind of idea. Does that make any sense to you?
I'm with you, man, because I have 3 from the Atlantic and 5 from the Metro as well. Okay.
But So here's why I think Philly and Pitt get in. And obviously you have the Rangers and Philly, right?
Yes.
I think the Flyers, Chuck Fletcher said it on Thursday. It feels like 2 years ago here. I think Carter Hart's going to rebound in a big way. The goaltending was such a big part of their demise last year, and they still, as bad as they were, they still really weren't that far off in a point scheme to getting in. There's that. They're also a way tougher team to play against. If Ryan Ellis is healthy, Rasmus Ristolainen, they've got a power play specialist now on Keith Yandel that they didn't previously have. Their back end is much better suited. And yes, they lost a little punch offensively, I think, with Jake Voracek, moving on to Columbus. But I think Cam Atkinson is in that 25 to 30 goal range. And so, I just think the Flyers are going to be a much more difficult team to play against, which probably is good for them. And then Pittsburgh, we talked about it with Rob Rossi on the pod last week, episode 67, that this Pittsburgh team, this is the last dance. Like you could honestly if you were going to pick a team to do an all or nothing this year and go behind the scenes, I'd put all the cameras in Pittsburgh because they've won 3 championships.
Yeah.
They've got this core that's immensely popular, and Malkin and Chris Letang, they know that in the final year of their deals, they may never be together again. And they've got an incredibly long playoff streak, 15 years, I believe, on the line. I think that they'll find a way, whether, and Malkin's extremely motivated. Let's not forget, this is an Olympic year. We talked about this. He's going to be back before the Olympics, whether it's early January, late January, whatever it is. He's going to play at least 4 to 5 games to show that he's healthy to the Penguins before they sign off on him going to the Olympics and playing for Russia. So to me, I just think the Penguins they have just enough to scratch and claw their way in. And this is sort of the last hurrah for this group before some big changes are coming.
So essentially we have 7 of the same playoff teams in Toronto, Florida, Tampa Bay, the Islanders, Washington, Carolina. We both have Philly, and then I have the Rangers and you have Pittsburgh. And I can see the argument easily for the Penguins. The 15-year thing, sadly, all good things come to an end at some point, Frank. And I think it's the Rangers have been the best team not to make the playoffs the last few years, at least for the final few months of each season. Now, maybe that'll be their problem again, as they start too slow and they think they're going to pass everybody in the pack, and then they end up, just missing out. It could happen again. But the Rangers, to me, are ready to go. If Pittsburgh was healthy to start the season, then I couldn't pick him out. And Pittsburgh was the one team that I struggled with. I think the Metro was extremely tight. One day I was like, okay, I'm putting the Penguins in, I'm taking out the Flyers. And then I was like, oh, it's the Rangers. And ultimately I decided on New York. I like New York. I picked New York as my kind of surprise team to have a really good jump up. And you know what? I looked at their schedule. They got a decent schedule overall this year. And, it's funny, like not a lot of teams have a massive condensed schedule because of the extra 14 days that they've got in the season this year. I know everyone's like, well, there's always an Olympic break. Yeah, but the season ends now at the end of April, and usually it ends April 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th. So that extra time off, I think, is going to help some teams. And the Rangers...
It's also starting a week or 10 days later than normal, too.
Yeah, usually we'll start on like the 6th, so it's kind of like, a week later. I just think there's that extra 10 days at the end of the season that's allowing it to be less condensed than other seasons have been in an Olympic year. And I think that's going to benefit a team like New York. Overall, I really like their team. Panarin is, hey, he's the bread man. I like the fact that he knows who he is. I don't want to be captain. That's not who I am. Good for him. And Fox he's coming. He was obviously very good last year. I think he's going to be good again this year. You brought up the one point that I agreed with, and that's the goaltending. And until you do it year in and year out, I'm not ready to anoint. It was like people who jumped on the Korpisalo train after his one playoff run, and he was standing on his head, and they're like, oh, this guy's great. And 3 out of 4 years he's been an .897 save percentage. To me, that's not consistent enough to be good. And so I do need to see a little bit more.
47 games.
Yeah, I agree. That's the one question mark.
And look, I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm just saying he hasn't proven it. Yeah. And you know what's funny? I wanted to give some love to the bottom two teams in the Metro. This was not a foregone conclusion for me with New Jersey and Columbus. And I know people are probably sitting there going, Columbus, really? Like, what do you see? That team is going to work its ass off. So to think that you're going to get a free night against Columbus, like that's just not the case. I kind of had a hard time. I'm wondering if they're going to be sneaky, not good, not playoff team, but they're going to be so competitive that they find a way to not finish last. And then I didn't know what to do with New Jersey because I really like the young players they have. They've obviously gotten better with Dougie Hamilton. Mackenzie Blackwood is a legit starter. I mean, Ryan Graves was a great offseason addition. I personally don't see a ton separating the Rangers and Devils, to be honest.
That's going to be fun, man. I'm not as high on New Jersey as a lot of other people. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. I think I like New Jersey's young players better. The Rangers young players better than the New Jersey young players. That's what it came down to me. Yeah,
so give me one. We got one wild card question here. Speaking of the East, and we'll have another one for the West. Give me Austin Matthews' goal total this season.
God, the tough part about that is can he play his games? Because if he's in the lineup every night, then I would definitely go higher. I'm gonna say 54.
Okay.
He'll score 50 for the first time. I think he's like a legit 50 goal scorer. He's obviously one of the best shooters in the league, and he would have scored 50 a few years ago, no question. So I will say 54 for Matthews. Unfortunately, I think he misses some games. Otherwise, he'd push for 60.
I'm going to say 58, closer to that 60 number. I still think he misses a handful of games, 5-7 games, somewhere in that neighborhood. But I think it's possible that he scores 58 in like 75 games. That's how good he is. And the wrist is healed. I could easily see him 62, 65 if he plays all 82.
No, it's very possible.
But that's where the bet is interesting, right? It's like how many games does he miss, and what is that? How does that end up impacting the total? Because that's impacted him every year. He could have set the team record last year.
Oh, 100%. And the wrist is a concern for me too, right? Like obviously they're being ultra cautious on it to start the season, but I just wonder if in a week, what if he jams his wrist? What if you take a lot of pressure
What if
on
he
that
has
wrist
the back injury that seems to have popped up for him every now and again?
Yeah.
I mean,
So
these
you
are all important questions.
I'm someone who I never call people injury prone because I think that we've seen some guys who have it for 2-3 years and it's gone for 5 or 6. I hope he's not one of those superstar players that always has to miss, 10%, 15% of the games, because the league's better. I don't care what league 100%. You cheer for. The league's better when the best players are in the league every night. Yep. So hope that happens. So be a lot of fun. Hey, let's welcome Tyler into the woodjerseys.com studio for a little buy or sell.
Yes, buy or sell, you guys. It is brought to you by and delivered by our friends at DoorDash, where first-time users of the app can use the promo code RundownDD and get themselves 25% off. It's going to have to be a quick version of buy or sell here because I know we are running out of time. So consider it a combination of rapid fire and buy or sell. And the first one here, I was looking at some team total over-unders. I'm going to say the Sabres do not crack the 65-point mark. They'll be under 65 points this year. Frank, you buying or selling?
I'm buying. I could see that. I could see them in the 57, 58 range. I mean, the goaltending alone should cost them a ton of points.
Yes.
2017, the Colorado Avalanche had 48 points.
Ooh.
Buffalo is going to push for that. Honestly, Buffalo's team, they don't have a lot. It's unfortunate for those players. I feel sorry for them. It's not their fault, but they're going into a gunfight with one of those little plastic water guns, and it's got a hole in the bottom of it, and it just drips out.
I would like to point out that our friends at PointsBet USA have the total for the Sabres set at 65.5. So if you want to lay some money on that, there's an opportunity to do it.
Jay is logging in as we
I am right now, but I'm so confident that I'll take some of Frank's money and put it down.
The second over-under that caught my eye was the Montreal Canadiens. They're set at 90.5. I'm going to say they don't hit the 90-point mark. Jason, buying or selling?
Well, I don't have them as a playoff team. And I think the point totals in the East are going to be right around
94.
So I am going to go under. I will sell, and I will say under 90.
I would take that bet. I would go over. I just, all the reasons I outlined about the Habs, I just think they're going to be better than people think.
Third one I got up here, moving on to some players. I'm going to say Taylor Hall bounces back to be a 20-goal scorer with the Boston Bruins this season. Frank, you buying or selling?
Buying. It's not an incredibly high bar to set for a guy that can score, and you saw him come back and be reinvigorated in Boston. I think he's comfortable now. He's got a little term. He knows that he's going to be there for a little bit. The team's better. Easy 20 goals.
Yeah, Halls is an interesting because he's never really been a high octane goal scorer, right? Produces points, but 20 goals to me. If Taylor Hall doesn't get 20 goals, and that's actually not a very good full season for him at all. So I would say 20 for sure. I'll buy.
When the line first opened on most sports books, it was at 13.5. That's what I was able to get in on. I think he might get 14 in the first half of the season alone. Cole Caulfield. A lot of hype around him, obviously, favorite to win the Calder Trophy. I'm going to say he doesn't hit the 30-point mark, though, which is where I've seen some people project him. Gregor, you buying or selling?
Did you say 30 points?
30 goals. Sorry, 30 goals.
Oh,
30
I
goals.
was going to say 30 points.
30
goals. No, I will sell all day long. 30 goals is hard in the National Hockey League. It's very difficult. And I know he's a shooter. They had some success scoring goals down the stretch, especially at 3-on-3. He's a dynamic player there, but it's the regular season now. Teams will know him a little bit better, and the NHL is a tough league to score in. I think Cole Caulfield gets over 20, but under 30.
Over under is 30?
Yeah.
I would take the over. I'm not going to bet again. Like I would hate to be that person that's sitting there betting the under. If you put a gun to my head and said, you have to bet Cole Caulfield over or under, I would take the over because I wouldn't want to be saying, please don't score. Please don't score. This guy's on a tear. It's like that guy watching the football game, rooting for the under stinks. I think in this case, Cole Caulfield will be right in that range. And I think he gets there. Some guys just find a way. And for whatever reason, every single time people have found a way to write this guy off, even going back to the hype around his draft year. And people were saying, oh, he's too small, and you watch him fall in the draft. Teams continue to measure with a tape measure. And you go back and you look at his last calendar year, whatever those graphics were popping up in the Cup final, and all the goals that he had scored last count, it was like 60 some. I know it's a bunch of different levels and I know all that, but in his limited window that he's shown with the NHL and the Montreal Canadiens, hard to bet against Cole Caulfield. I'm taking the over. And by the way, I got so lost in looking this up. The lowest amount of goals Taylor Hall has scored in a full season in which he's played 70 games, at least 70 games, is 20. So
seems like a lot.
20, 22, 27, 26, 39. So, yeah.
All right, and here's the last one I got for you. Back-to-back years where Braden Point has failed to be a point-per-game player. I'm going to say he kind of bounces back in a way this season and sets a career high, which would be more than 92 points. Braden Point to get more than 92 points. Gregor, you buying or selling?
Ooh, now that's a really good line. I'm a huge fan of Braden Point. Kucherov's here to start the season. Him and Kucherov are dynamic together. So yeah, I'm going to take the over on Braden Point to score 92. I think increased power plays this year are going to help some of these high productive offensive players, and we're going to have more numbers. So I will say definitely buying on 92 points for Braden Point.
I am going to sell.
Ooh.
I'm going to take the under. I think he's in the 78 to 85 range. You look back to his 92-point season, he had 20 power play goals that led the league. I don't know that anyone's scoring 20 power play goals again. And, I like him with Kucherov, all the things you said. It's still a pretty high number to get to.
There you go.
Do you guys know in the last decade, only 7 rookies have scored 30 goals? Now, Austin Matthews, the most with 40. Patrick Laine had 36. Michael Grabner had 34. What happened to Michael Grabner? Logan Couture, 32. Skinner and Kyle Connor, 31. And Artemi Panarin had 30. It's tough to score as a rookie, so that's a good line. That's a good number of 30 goals.
31, Kyle Connor to me is the roadmap for Cole Caulfield to get there. He comes in and scores 31. I don't know. I think he has quite clearly the ability to do it.
All right, there you go. That is buy or sell delivered by DoorDash restaurants and more, delivered right to your door. Use the promo code Rundown. DD gets you 25% off, no delivery fees on your first order.
Awesome. Yeah, the Cole Caulfield question is great. I think you're going to get a lot of varying opinions. 30 is a really good line number. That one really had to think about it. Ty crushed on that one. It was a little weak on the Hall 20 goals. So, he evened out there. So we'll have some fun with him on that one. We will do the West on Monday, and we'll have a guest on the pod as well. It's an interesting weekend. Of course, by the time pretty much the waiver wire, I think it's 3 o'clock, Frank, on Monday, 3 o'clock Mountain Time, 5 o'clock Eastern. The teams have to submit their rosters, but anybody that has to go on waivers has to go on waivers Sunday by, they'll go on waivers at 2 Eastern, noon Mountain Time. So we'll look for the waiver wire that should be fairly heavy over the weekend, and we'll have some names, and we'll see if there's some names that teams might claim. We've already seen 2 waiver claims a little early in the process. We'll see if there's a few more of them potentially available. Once again, that was the DFO Rundown, brought to you by Fantrax, the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience, whether you got a keeper league, a redraft league, a dynasty league. Check it out at Fantrax, that's TRAX.com/DFO Rundown, where you can enter and win a signed Nathan MacKinnon jersey. Frank, enjoy your weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday.
Thanks for listening to the DFO Rundown with Saravalli and Gregor. Keep it locked on dailyfaceoff.com and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode. Delivered by DoorDash.